Okay, yep. All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this awesome webinar panel that we have going. We have an amazing lineup today. High level, what we're going to be talking about: infrastructure as code, vendor lock-in, is it real? Is it a myth? Becoming an AWS hero. And who better to talk about it than Benoît, and Igor, all doing amazing things in the serverless community. And with that, yeah, do you want to each kind of individually give the audience a little bit of your backgrounds, and we can just kick it off there. Ro, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. My name is Rosius Ndimofor. I'm a senior serverless developer at Serverless Guru. I've been in cloud for about a year now, and I'm an AWS hero, serverless hero. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for introducing yourself, Sam. My name is Igor, and I'm from Finland. I'm AWS community builder from October 2021. My biggest achievement was to talk with the real-time translation on AWS Pancration for Japanese audience, which I'm very proud of. Very fun experience, and I'm also blogging and talking about CDK, infrastructure as code, and many other things related to AWS and serverless. Working as an independent contractor with different companies, big or small. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I'm Benoît. I'm also a community builder since last October, just as Igor. Also blogging, quite active on Twitter since about a year now. And I'm also a full-time serverless developer at Serverless Guru, just like Ro. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. My name is Ryan Jones, founder of Serverless Guru. Try to get it in the weeds and code a bit too on the serverless development side, even now, building side projects and then making Ro and Benoît listen to me rant about it privately. But yeah, so this is an awesome panel. We just started doing this recently. This is going to be our second one here today. So anybody that's watching, you're part of an early movement that we're going to try to do pretty much every month moving forward, maybe even bi-weekly. So on that topic, let's go ahead and jump straight in. So infrastructure as code, building modern cloud applications, it's complex. There's lots of different moving parts. How do you build it? How do you navigate if a company already has existing infrastructure as code tooling to switch them towards it? I know Igor has a perspective on this one. And so with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. Igor, give us your thoughts on 2022 serverless development, cloud development on AWS. What are you working with, and what are your thoughts on infrastructure as code?
Thanks for such introduction. I think we're in these times where there are so many different tools, and serverless is not so young anymore because people are adopting it, companies are using it. As I working with the startups or I'm working with the Fortune 500 companies, it's always the thing that there is already some serverless pipeline there, so something is already happening. Event-driven architectures are already happening right now in this times, and I believe that I really enjoy working with the AWS native tools. I started my journey with the Serverless Framework. I think for me it was the greatest start ever because it was so easy to do this. But then during my work, I migrated to CloudFormation, SAM, and CDK, and I have an opinion that this is kind of interesting way of doing this. So you can start from either way. The main idea is just to listen to the customer and to the people and the companies which you're working from, and not to do the big change straight away and understand what's needed. So my idea on that everything will work, and you cannot just change things in one day or one night or 1 week. So you need to be able to collaborate with other teams and sometimes educate teams. And for me, my latest experience was using CloudFormation, SAM, and CDK, and I found really nice ways to combine them all. And use them in such a way that it can be united and the team could be educated of how to do this and why to do this. Here are my couple of thoughts on that.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah.
well.
Okay. Yeah, I can jump in here quickly. And I think what Igor just said, it makes sense. There are so many media tools that do infrastructure as code. I think they all kind of work. It just depends on your preferences, maybe on your use cases and where you come from. Usually, when I want to look at an IaC tool, for me, what matters the most right now is that as long as it's backed by CloudFormation, pretty much anything works. It just depends on your use case, as I said, but I want to, I really want it to be backed by CloudFormation because I know that if anything goes wrong, then CloudFormation would just roll everything back exactly as it was. I've used in the past some tools that would try to use the SDK, and the idea is great because it's kind of faster if you orchestrate it correctly. But then rolling back was not as smooth as it should be. Maybe some parts of your infrastructure would not roll back properly, or if the rollback fails, it's completely, it can break your infrastructure basically. And if that happens on production, that's really, really bad. And another thing I don't like about non-CloudFormation tools is that it's also hard to keep maybe the state of your infrastructure somewhere. So if you share the infrastructure code with teammates or between different environments and stages, if you lose that state, usually it's kept somewhere in a file, maybe it's kept on S3 or on your local machine. If you lose that, suddenly if you need to change something or redeploy, it fails or it just doesn't work properly. And I've faced that in the past with tools like Terraform or back in the days with the serverless components. So for me, really, what matters the most is CloudFormation. Now, as if it's Serverless Framework, SAM, or the CDK, well, it depends on your preferences. What I like about maybe SAM and the Serverless Framework is that they are maybe closer to CloudFormation. They are more written in YAML or in JSON. So if you need to migrate something maybe that is already written in CloudFormation, if you want to migrate it to, say, Serverless Framework, it's usually easier. Or if you want to copy and paste and borrow some snippets somewhere, that could be easier as well.
I think SAM and serverless are great because they have this ability to support exactly lambdas, exactly serverless use cases, which I really enjoy. And tracking the state is another thing which gives us the capabilities of the CloudFormation. So it's almost impossible to mess things up with CloudFormation, but with SDK, it's super easy. You're providing resources, you never know what will happen next.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
And
Yeah, go ahead, Ro.
yeah, so I've had the opportunity to work with the three, well, SAM, Serverless Framework, and CDK in the past. And well, back when I began writing cloud applications back in March 2021, if I was presented with these three, if I was actually presented with an application that was written in these three, that they used these three IaC frameworks to actually write them, I think back then I'll go with CDK. Why? Because of code over configuration. Because I wasn't really that used to YAML, or so looking at configuration files and trying to provision resources on a configuration sheet was really, for me, it was really challenging to pick up. But with CDK, I saw that you could actually just use, it gave me the opportunity to use JavaScript and immediately, provision my resources in the cloud. But it also comes at a cost because, like Benoît said, migration, if an application written in CDK will be actually really challenging, migrating it to SAM or serverless. So at the end of the day, it just depends on your use case and what you're actually building, your team and everything else. So that's my point on it. That's my point of view on that. So.
Yeah, thanks, Ro. I believe one thing which I would like to add that this in the end, when you're writing CDK, you're getting CloudFormation template, which makes it easy to collaborate with other teams, and which I really enjoy. So the developer is writing his code in TypeScript or Python, for example, like the most popular environments as I see for the CDK, and he or they are writing the code, and for example, they don't have this fear of infrastructure of writing it, how to provision it, because with YAML, looks like there is some stigma of being just ops person or admin or DevOps professional, but with the CDK, it gives less. The barrier is becoming low. That's I really enjoy about CDK. But the ops team will understand what's happening because they will get CloudFormation in the end.
Yeah, totally. And what I think I like also about the CDK and maybe frameworks that are maybe code focused instead of configuration focused is that you can easily, or at least more easily, get auto-completion in your IDE. So it makes it easier maybe in the end to write code without having to constantly go to the documentation, see, okay, what was the key for that that attribute, and stuff. And another thing I like about the CDK are constructs. Constructs are really powerful. You can write reusable pieces of infrastructure that you can use in several projects, and you don't have to rewrite them again or have to rely on things like the SAM patterns or things like that, and go copy paste all over again all the time. By just importing that construct from a package, could be an npm package or whatever language you are using, just import it, and then auto-completion just does the rest.
Great point on that. I think that this CDK is giving, or like there is also Pulumi, for example. They're giving us many possibilities, honestly, on having everything as code, and which I really enjoy. And constructs are these kind of things which are saving time, because in my recent project, we had an opportunity to reuse a couple of constructs I have written for the other teams, and it was super easy to set up other repositories which were doing completely other things. For example, setting up the custom domain was much easier and attaching to API gateway than it was before, because it's like not doing 100 lines of YAML in every CloudFormation template, but just doing it in the same construct. We have not done it to publishing, but you can publish it in your NPM registry, and it gives you even more possibilities to share it between the teams.
Yeah, I have a couple of follow-up questions to this conversation, because I think we're getting into some cool stuff here. The first one is based on what you just said, Igor. It started making me think, like, when it comes to constructs, CDK, and building using CDK versus something like CloudFormation, what do y'all think is the skill level difference required? Is it an easier leap for CDK? Is it less of a leap for CDK? And also with that question, does everyone need to be writing these constructs, or are we talking a dedicated team at a company? And at what scale, if that is true, if we need more of a dedicated people that are building these constructs for the entire company to leverage, so that not individual cloud developers are writing all that stuff themselves, but just using those abstractions written by other people. If that is the case, is that a 20-person company? Is that a 50-person company? And so what are y'all's thoughts, skill level wise, CDK versus CloudFormation versus AWS SAM versus Serverless Framework? Which one has an easier on-ramp? Where do they potentially break down? Yeah, so let's go off that. Whoever wants to take it.
Thanks for these questions. Actually, too many in just 2 questions, but I will try to start gathering this around. So first of all, skill-wise, it's really interesting how people are coming to writing infrastructure as code, because I see so many different people with different backgrounds in the development, for coming from ops side or coming from developer sides. So they are interested into this infrastructure as code because they know that it's like making it easier for them. And maybe ops teams are more into YAML configurations, and they will enjoy serverless or CloudFormation or SAM, for example. But on the other hand, as I said, with CDK, the barrier will become lower for the developers. And I have been once talking with a person who's using step functions, and they are using step functions so much that they are almost not using lambdas, and everything there is just CDK code. And there is this distinction between application code and infrastructure code is becoming less visible. So it's becoming more transparent, let's say. And I think you definitely need to know the basics of AWS. For example, if we are talking about the AWS here mostly, you definitely need to know the basics. You need to know the basic components: S3, Lambdas, SQS, SNS, AppSync, API Gateway. And skill-wise, it's better to have this kind of cloud skills already, like this cloud knowledge. But from which side you're coming, it's better to decide for the team where you have more capabilities. For example, if the team is strong in ops, and the person knows, for example, Python, this could be nice that this CDK could be started. But if the team also coming from web development, I noticed that front-end people are more interested in the serverless because they see that the writing backend is not a rocket science. And Lambda is already giving a lot of capabilities for the front-end developers, of people who spend more time in front-end development. And this was, I think, the first question. So, and the second thing regarding the teams and should it be dedicated team or not, I believe that there should be kind of assembly of people who are interested in the topic of infrastructure as code and creating practices and talking about this and trying to use them in different contexts, in different repositories. And that's uber cool when you have this team of 3-5 maybe people who are discussing infrastructure as code, and not only discussing that, but trying to make best practices, making presentations and stuff like that. And they are already interconnected with others. So they are working, for example, on different projects. And I think it's better to have like several people in different projects, which are like, for example, if we have 3 projects, having 3 people who will be distributed over 3 projects, than having just an ops team, because this will definitely create a silo. So what's your experience, guys, here?
Yeah, I would say that maybe part of the job as a serverless developer, most of the time, writing infrastructure and understanding the infrastructure is part of the job. So usually most of us know how it works. So difficult, it should not be difficult for most senior people, at least. But things like CDK construct can really help to get started really quickly. But I think it's also very important to understand how it works under the hood. So you need to, I would encourage everyone that starts and maybe they start using the CDK to actually go and look at the compiled CloudFormation code and try to understand it. Because if something goes wrong, and one day it will, CloudFormation will complain about something, it's very usually important to be able to look into the CloudFormation code and see, okay, what's wrong? Maybe sometime you will get a dependency, a circle dependency error from CloudFormation, and you need to understand how all these resources are interconnected. So yeah, as I said, it's very important to understand how it works. But CDK, Serverless Framework, usually they make it easier to write the code. And I think it's kind of a double advantage. One way, it helps people to start really quickly, but for more senior people, it actually helps to do things faster and not having to write so many lines of code, and it's also easier to get it wrong. So it simplifies in the end our work. So that was the first question, I think. And I think it kind of, the second question kind of relates to what I just said, is do you need a dedicated team to do that? I think not. I think most of the time, developers will write their own construct or their own serverless plugin or whatever. But the goal here is not to make things easier to someone that doesn't know how it works. It's made to make it easier for you, for yourself, to actually ship things faster and do things faster.
I could relate to it, Benoît, just one small addition, that I feel that many people who are doing serverless, they are very much into infrastructure also, because of the idea that you are doing less infrastructure. You're focusing more on application code, but in the end, you still know more than just the person who is writing the same things in the container, for example, where people tend to be more focused on the just application code. And for them, packing it in the Docker is nothing, just building Docker file, and that's it. But for serverless people, it's already connected. Everything is connected. That's my addition.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think also I think I'll augment or like add some stuff on what Benoît said when it concerns building applications with CDK using constructs. It's true. You should know how the application works under the hood. You know how CloudFormation templates work, because one day something will break and you will have to debug that. So having that skill of knowing how to debug your CloudFormation template is really essential. Even though CDK abstracts that by letting you use constructs, but knowing how to actually debug your CLI, your CloudFormation templates, very essential to developing, create cloud applications.
And so to kind of go off of what y'all are just talking about here, I have a couple more questions. So I guess like we talked about senior experience, CDK, we're working with infrastructure as code. Potentially it sounds like you don't need a dedicated team to basically be building that out. Let's go with the question of beginner versus senior. So someone is maybe already a developer. They're now getting started with AWS development. And is CDK the better route there? Is CloudFormation, is AWS SAM, is Serverless Framework? We could take two different scenarios. One, they're working at an existing company that maybe already uses something, so maybe that plays a role. And then two, it's completely greenfield, so they could just choose. And so we're saying, like, what do y'all believe would have like the fastest on-ramp? And are there any downstream things that could happen? For instance, when you write code, you have to test code, and you other things like that. So I guess let's start there with the first question, which is beginner versus senior developer. For that beginner developer, which route potentially gives them the best outcome?
I could try to answer that first. I think if you have if you're just starting, pretty much any of the existing tool could work. But maybe I would choose the CDK for one reason, is that you can actually write your infrastructure in the same code that you write your application. So in the end, it's less of a learning curve. It's a language you already know, you already master, probably, and it's it just makes sense because it's much easier to start with.
I would add here, thanks, Benoît. I would add here that when I tried the Node.js function in CDK, which gives the ability to pack your code with ESBuild, it gives you this really opportunity just to have everything as code and not worry about many things, because it's already in the same package JSON, and it's like just a couple of comments and you're just building and deploying everything and generating your synthesizing your cloud formation. So these things, when you're not having this building stage, I think now, at least for Node.js, maybe CDK could be a really great option. But here I would say that personally, like as a person, when you're developing yourself in the cloud, it's better to start with CloudFormation or AWS console anyway, to see the things, to see the things how they are looking in the ways they are created. But in the company, you will need to adopt. That's another thing. You cannot just change it as I started in the beginning.
Okay, and Ro?
Yeah, I think for a beginner, I don't think you prefer a 150-line CloudFormation template. So maybe a 5-line CDK script, script. So for a start, like I mentioned before, if you present, let me say, a REST API built with SAM, CDK, and Serverless Framework, I would have preferred CDK because it just spoke the language I'm used to. And I never had to go ahead to write any, or to learn any YAML, or to know that, okay, I have to indent lines in order for it to run properly. And then one crazy thing I realized when I was developing CDK apps is that to give permissions to a Lambda to access a DynamoDB or to put data into DynamoDB, you just have to use the function grant read-write access or something like that. Just one line and that is it. But in SAM, it's not like that. It's not like that. So because I had a hard time wrapping my head around rules and policies. So I think that actually gives beginners a really difficult time. But with CDK, it's just one line and poof, you're gone. It sets up everything for you. But I don't know how that works out in the long run when you have real issues and you have to look at the template. Like if you're not used to looking at the template, it would be a real issue at that moment. So I think that's my take on it.
Okay, awesome. And we have some questions from the audience, and then I want to do a prediction question for everybody to answer individually, which is 5 years from now, what are we doing? Are we still using everything? Are we now doing like Pulumi only? Is it CDK? So I'll save that one for right after I bring up some of the stuff from the audience. So first up here, we have a comment around CloudFormation is more difficult for developer. CDK is more friendly from Duvan. So thank you for submitting that. And also, but learn CloudFormation basics is very essential for how to work with CDK. And I think that's been mirrored by a lot of y'all's answers so far. And then we also have, what do you think about the idea of separate business logic in an infrastructure as code serverless project? So the infrastructure project will be in CDK and the backend project will be in Serverless Framework. So that's a great question, actually. What do y'all think about having something that's different on the front end versus the back end? I know that I've personally seen clients use Vercel, and then they'll use Serverless Framework, or in this case it was Serverless Framework, but they use Vercel for the front end side. So what are y'all's thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what in the question means using the infrastructure for with CDK and the backend for Serverless Framework. I see that the backend could be part of the infrastructure. But yeah, it depends. I think more globally, I think you can absolutely mix different infrastructure tools for, let's say, different microservices. So you could have maybe an API written in Serverless Framework because it's easier to write maybe an API gateway API with that. But the rest, let's say you have a serverless step function workflow somewhere, And if you want to use the CDK to do that, to make it reusable, maybe, as we discussed, then yes, why not? That's fine. I think maybe the challenge comes if you need to reuse some pieces of the library, maybe some I don't know, some helpers or some code basically in both projects. It might become harder to just make them work in both scenarios. But that's maybe related to something we discussed last month about monorepo, but yes, why not? I don't see any inconvenience, except the fact that maybe if someone new comes to the team, if they are not familiar with one or another, or maybe they have to learn both, that's going to be maybe a greater learning curve. But if it makes sense because it's easier to do one thing with one framework and another thing with another framework, yes, go ahead.
I think it's a great thought, honestly. And I would say that here, in terms of the technologies and frameworks for infrastructure as code, I would prefer to go with AWS native ones using CloudFormation, SAM, or CDK, the one which is better for the team, of course. Because with serverless, as you said, Benoît, it would be creating the friction that somebody will need to know everything. And that's the problem, actually, when there is one person who is more dedicated to ops and working with a couple of projects, and every team decides on its own, the overhead for the person who is doing it, or a couple of people who are doing things, how to, for example, find the best practices, would be more complicated. That's one of the dangers I see in using, for example, in one project, serverless, SAM, or Terraform, for example, and because they all have a different approach. Of course, maybe serverless and CDK or SAM would be closer to CloudFormation than Terraform, of course, because as we started, that being backed by CloudFormation is the best thing you can do in this kind of thing, because it's a native way of AWS.
Yeah, I think AWS actually saw that, and that's why they gave you the capability of combining SAM and CDK, right? So you can use SAM for your logs and maybe your configs, and then you can use CDK for whatever you want to use it for. So
I have just recently tried it, actually, to combine SAM and CDK in the same project. And it's amazing because I ended up creating serverless application repository application with the SAM and CDK. So I was writing code for CDK and packing it as a SAM and doing the serverless application, and then share it across the environments. And we saved tons of people's man hours to do, for example, monitoring and set up alarms and stuff like that. This was incredible experience, and I'm now basically preparing the article about this, that you could marry a couple of different technologies if you know how they could be integrated with each other and what are they in the end. Because for SAM and CDK, when you use SAM constructs, because there are constructs for Lambda, for example, which are dedicated to SAM in CDK, you're in heaven, honestly, because it was already well thought for you that you could do it. And serverless application repository is not so hard because you just adding it into your root of CloudFormation template. You're just adding metadata, and that's it. You could publish it. So I would recommend to try it at some point if you need this kind of serverless application repository thing. Even it's not well advertised for some reason, but serverless application repository gives you so many capabilities in terms of repeated tasks in the environments.
Absolutely. Oh, that's super cool. So anybody watching, definitely check that out. Yeah, so thanks for sharing. And I'm sure everybody's looking out for the article. So you want to probably see the
I need to be
release.
accountable.
Yeah, follow Igor on Twitter and say, hey, where's that article?
Yeah, I would be glad.
Awesome. Okay, so next up we have our favorites. So let's go like round robin maybe in a quick form, just so we can hit the other couple questions. Let's start with Ro first. Ro, what's your favorite?
Oh man, I think I'll go with SAM because of SAM Accelerate. The team behind SAM, they're doing an absolutely fantastic job. And I wrote an application about 2 months back, and it was quite a breeze using the new SAM Accelerate capabilities to actually build the application. So what happens is that they have some command line, they have some commands that you use on the command line, which enable you to deploy your application faster, and then it also monitors the changes in your application, and then lets you deploy your Lambda under about 7 seconds. So I actually felt really productive using that, because I made, when I was developing the application, I was trying to learn a lot, so I made a lot of mistakes. And when I just correct those mistakes in the Lambda, and then I issue the command, in about 7 seconds, it's already deployed to the cloud, and then I can go to, because it was an AppSync API, so I can actually just go to the AppSync console and test immediately. So it was quite a breeze working with SAM. Something that I've not really, I don't know if Serverless Framework has that capability, or CDK, but man, the SAM Accelerate is something else. And I think if you're watching this, you need to try it out. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I'll go with SAM. Thank you.
I could continue.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I would choose CDK here, obviously, because it just sorry, my Siri started to work for some reason. Okay, I choose CDK because with CDK you're getting superpowers as a developer. Because I think, as for me, when I learned about Lambdas, I was thinking, okay, Lambdas are great for front-end people, or for any kind of developers to do backend on the fly. So with CDK, you can do infrastructure also very easily and almost on the fly, because you're writing the same language and you're not switching contexts too much to YAML or to anything else. But SAM is also great. I would say that SAM also has great things, and especially working with Lambdas, providing APIs and creating event-driven architectures. It's an awesome thing to do with SAM. But constructs, they are in my heart. So with constructs, you can do even more things. That's why I'm choosing CDK.
I think I'm still faithful to Serverless Framework, but I guess the most important reason for that is that that's what I've been using for the past 3-4 years. So that's what I know the best. I know all the plugins I need. I know how to. I already have my templates and stuff like that, but I do really keep an eye on the CDK for the constructs and reusability. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna find some use cases for it very soon. And maybe to answer Ro's question about SAM Accelerate in the Serverless Framework, there is a way to do it. There's serverless deploy function. It's still manual, but I'm pretty sure they will jump on and try to copy what SAM Accelerate does. I hope they will, because that would be awesome.
Yep. And for me, I'm gonna go with the same answer as Benoît. I think we have to use what we know. So if I was gonna build a REST API today, or AppSync, or pretty much anything else at this point, I've got so many templates and things to pull from in Serverless Framework. And ultimately, what we're trying to all do is build something that we need to get done as fast as possible in a way that's going to be sustainable. And clearly, that could be any one of these options if you have the background in it and the experience to pull it off. So on that, thank you for sharing your favorites. Let's now jump to what would you recommend for a multi-cloud environment? So our next topic, maybe I'll hold on this and we'll just use this as a segue, because obviously we could probably all four of us talk for a long time, hours on infrastructure as code only. So moving to the next topic here, which is also a segue into that, vendor lock-in. So as we're thinking about infrastructure as code angle, and we're thinking about a multi-cloud scenario, let's first start at the very top. Vendor lock-in, is it a real thing? Is it a myth? And whoever wants to kick us off, go ahead.
Okay, I'll try. I think vendor lock-in is really a thing. So when you start using a vendor, you will pretty much for sure be stick with it for the rest of your product life. And the reason for that is that, yes, of course, you can have some tools that can abstract out like simple things like a REST API or a fast function, and do a simple thing as hello world. Well, yeah, that works. But suddenly you need a database. So what do you use? Well, maybe you use DynamoDB. Well, suddenly, yeah, you're already stuck with AWS. Okay, well, maybe you can try to add another layer of abstraction and allow maybe a special client to talk to either DynamoDB or I don't know what it's called, but Google's database, serverless database. I'm pretty sure it's going to break at some point, but then you can go next. You need suddenly a state machine. That becomes certainly harder to abstract out, and you're gonna maybe use a step function. Again, you're stuck with AWS. So I think vendor lock-in is inevitable. You should know it. We all know it. Usually, we all have our preferred infrastructure provider, and it's fine. Choose one, whichever it is that you prefer, and stick to it. If you need to migrate someday for some reason, I'm afraid you're going to have to rewrite most of your code.
Thanks, Benoît here. You said one thing, and I'm now thinking about Murakami, who said that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, about running and marathons. But here, I would say that there will be a pain of migrating to other cloud. That's definitely it. No matter how you would abstract things, would you use Kubernetes, for example? If we are talking about non-serverless backends, for example, or you're using just Lambdas, you will get into the point that DynamoDB and Cosmos DB from Azure, they will be having different queries and the different query mechanism and everything. So you should just assume it. And the more I'm into the different projects and different clients' work, I would say that most of the companies know this. And people who are deciding on the architecture, they know that they will be having vendor lock. So it's not a myth, there is a thing, but you just need to live with it and not to try to conquer it or to fight with it and try to deploy everything with virtual machines with your own databases or own Kubernetes cluster, or I don't know, launching Firecracker everywhere, which is actually now a great capability to run Lambdas everywhere, which could be an interesting opportunity to try on that, to write something like Terraform module for running your Lambdas everywhere with the same code. This can be a really nice hobby project, to try winning the vendor locking. But you couldn't escape APIs. You can like at API level, you couldn't escape DynamoDB, or sorry, so many databases. I mean, you cannot escape database layer or just storage layer, which is also different.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. Unless if you really, really want no vendor lock-in, I'm afraid, as you said, Igor, you're going to be stuck with containers, with Kubernetes, Docker, and databases that are maybe non-vendor specific, maybe MySQL, Postgres. But suddenly we are not talking serverless anymore. It's a completely different world, And if you really want serverless, then vendor lock-in is inevitable. And as you said, pain is inevitable, suffering is an option. Well, if you really want to migrate for whatever reason, which I think is there's probably no good reason to migrate, but if you do, well, you'll have to suffer a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really great discussion. So I appreciate both of y'all diving deep into there. I also want to flag that it looks like Ro did drop off, potentially connection issues. So I'm sure he'll join us back in a second. But while that's taking place, we'll just keep on rolling through. So I guess like my opinion on this is, I guess the follow-up to this is, yes, there's lock-in. Do we care about the lock-in? I would say from my opinion, not really, because ultimately, like Benoît was saying, if you do have to go through this process of having to switch vendors for some reason, there's probably cases. It's hard to almost like pin down a case where a company that's been at this, I don't know, at the scale of like Netflix has been like, we're going to switch away from AWS, which is who they use currently, to something like Google Cloud. And for some reasons that are actually like real tangible, the services, the SLAs, all these things like did not function properly to drive that decision versus some other business hierarchical decision where they're just basically dropping on everybody from on high and saying, we are now switching to this other vendor. And so, yeah, so I guess my opinion would be double down on what you have. And ultimately think about what you're trying to accomplish, right? If you're paying your developers and your engineers to spend double the amount of time to make your application run and be failover to different clouds, not only different availability zones at different regions, but now different complete clouds, and you're rewriting using different queues and self-hosted things like Igor was saying with Kubernetes or with all virtual machines and so on. Are you actually accomplishing the goal of your business, which is probably to like sell products? It's probably you know what I mean? So there's like a goal of it, and potentially that time could be reinvested towards doubling down, tripling down on where you're at, and then adding new features to increase business revenue and so on for your customers. However, there are compliance things. I just remembered the Canadian government and other government type of applications, especially emergency services. Sometimes they might have to have something like that, where they have a multi-cloud resistant, but that's, not everybody. Go ahead, Igor.
One question for you here. So you're working also in the consulting business, and your clients are changing quite often, and you're working obviously with several ones. Have you seen such a thing that you started a project and the client is saying, okay, I would like to change the cloud, and you already made a serverless application, you built your SQS, SNS, S3, DynamoDB thingy with the AppSync, for example? Have you seen such a thing that the client saying, okay, I don't like AWS because I fear that AWS is Amazon and they are in the e-commerce business, and I'm also in e-commerce? What do you think? Have you seen such a thing? Have you experienced?
I've never seen it actually happen where it was already successful, where we already built something. I've definitely tried to I've gone the Google route. I've tried to build a Kubernetes thing. This was super early on, like early 2018 or something. I wanted to build in serverless. They wanted to use Kubernetes, try to build in Kubernetes on Google Cloud. And then so we ended up switching to AWS and using serverless because, I was like, I'm not going to push this forward anymore because I think it's a wrong decision. However, have I built something that actually worked and then come back and say, no, we're not going to use this. We're going to go to Azure instead and rewrite everything from scratch? Never. Benoît, what has been your experience?
Well, yeah, it's never happened to me. And I guess most of the time, maybe the client knows what provider they want. They probably already have one. And what I would say is that as I'm primarily focused on AWS, I would try to convince them to stick to it anyway, because I don't have almost no experience with Azure or Google. So basically, that would mean I would most likely lose the client or lose the contract. So, and well, it really depends here. If the project already started, it's probably easier to convince the client, explaining why it's impossible to move away from what we started without just rewriting everything. So that might be a good reason for the client to accept the fact and just stick to whatever we started with.
Okay, welcome back, Ro.
Yeah,
good to have you back with us. So we basically just went into during that period that was dropped as we were talking about vendor lock-in. So before we jump to some comments, do you want to give your view of it? Is vendor lock-in real? If so, do we care? What are your thoughts?
I actually heard Benoît talking about this, and I think it's really real because once, like he said, once you start using Amazon DynamoDB, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I think something's wrong. I cannot actually hear anymore.
We can hear you. So.
You guys can hear me? Oh, okay. So
yeah.
So once you're using the DynamoDB, you're already logged into AWS, and I don't know how you can switch from that to Google or maybe Azure. And so it's I think it's very real, and it's just the choice of the team and the product that you guys are willing to build. So you just have to I think it's a choice that you have to make. You have to choose one cloud provider and probably just stick to it, because vendor lock-in is actually really real. So
yeah,
okay.
I would like to add one thing to this. When you talk about migrating to a new cloud provider or about locking into one provider, it's just not about infrastructure and code usually. I was just thinking about DynamoDB, as Ro mentioned. When you use DynamoDB, well, maybe you're going to use single design or single table design patterns. You're going to use some features of DynamoDB that not necessarily would be available in other providers. The way they work, the way they scale, is probably not going to be the same. So you might also as well have to migrate not only the code and the infrastructure, but also maybe your data, because your data is going to be accessed differently. It's going to be stored differently. Could be also not only DynamoDB, but maybe some file containers like maybe S3. All this is going to be different. Is going to behave differently. So in the end, it's another thing to add to just migrating code and infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a super good point. And I think we could probably go down this rabbit hole as well in regard to how many things do you abstract out away from the cloud provider perspective. I would say that the times where I've seen companies just get absolutely hit in the face by the cloud provider switch is when they were doing something nefarious. That's I think we saw it with there was a US-based messaging app or something that was running on probably I think it was AWS, and then AWS basically kicked them off of the cloud provider, and then from there they had to basically scramble, and nobody else would give them a platform. But you could probably make an argument that that's they kind of made their own bed there. So and for the 99.99%, that's probably not a typical case that would happen. So not something to strategize around. So I do want to respect everyone's time. We have about 5 minutes left. We have a whole bunch of questions. So I know that we have this last one here, which is becoming an AWS hero, unmasking the truth behind it. I think we should definitely have perspectives on this. Ro, do you want to kind of kick off your experience being a hero with AWS? What does that mean? Pull the curtain back.
I mean, it's I think it's a name that I think, well, from my point of view, yeah, that's what I think. it's a lot of people think you're a pro at stuff, at AWS stuff, but most of the time it's not like that. The hero title has been the hero title was actually was given to me based on the amount of content shared, AWS content I shared online. It's about learning something and then sharing to the community, teaching them how to do stuff, because that was actually my vision. But I wasn't my target wasn't actually, when I started off, my target wasn't going for the AWS hero thing. I was just like wanting to know what this cloud thing was all about. And then I knew that when you teach once, you learn twice. That's why I was blogging so hard. I was blogging like every single day, just trying to like master the concept. I saw, because a lot of stuff was coming up, and then I saw a lot of possibilities. I saw a lot of different ways, different quick and fast ways to build applications, and I really wanted to learn that. And also I needed a job, and I did a lot of stuff. So that's what I was actually fighting for. I was trying to master serverless on cloud technology as fast as possible. And I knew that one of the quickest way to do that was to actually learn concepts, especially the difficult ones, and then try to break them down. Because they say if you can explain it to the understanding of a 5-year-old, but if you cannot explain it to the understanding of a 5-year-old, then you probably don't understand it yourself. So that was what I was trying to do. So in that process of trying to of learning stuff and trying to teach others how to do that, got me some attention from some eyes, which I don't know, because even they don't tell you what, they don't actually tell you what the criteria or what actually made them give you the hero stuff, or who actually nominated you. You just, I just got the letter from Amazon, and that was it. But what I know for sure is that, because I think that if you want to be a hero or a community builder, I think if you do a lot of content sharing online and stuff, on Twitter, on all necessary platforms, I think it'll get you a step closer to being a hero or a community builder or any of that. And I mean, they say this. Okay, I'm the only serverless hero in Africa, and that's strange, because I think there should be more of us. I mean, I I don't think I should be alone. It's lonely. I need some company. But it's a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling, and I just get a lot of credit for that. Like, I'm a pro, but I don't think, like, right now I get the opportunity to be mentioned in the same conversation with people like Benoît, who have hands on the team, who have like guys who have actually put in a lot of work into this one. And I get the opportunity to be mentioned in the same conversation with them. That shouldn't have happened if I wasn't a hero. So thanks, guys. You guys, I mean, it's been amazing, and it's still amazing. But I think that's just share content, AWS content, and it'll get you a step closer to being a hero or a community builder. Yeah.
I also want to add to that, it appears that humility is also a requirement for being a hero. So awesome there. Yeah. Okay. So other thoughts on, obviously, Igor, Benoît, y'all have been around AWS for a long time. From y'all's perspective, have y'all seen things with the Hero program, and what are your thoughts?
Okay, well, I think what Roger said totally makes sense. I think the most important parts, if you want to become a hero, or maybe just an AWS community builder, it's about sharing what you learn, sharing what you know. It doesn't matter where or how. It could be Twitter, it could be your blog, it could be you could have a newsletter, a podcast, whatever. I think quantity is not necessarily the most important thing. I think quality and especially accuracy is important. You also don't need to be like a super expert in what you talk about. It could be very basic and very content for beginners, very simple stuff. As long as you are accurate, that's I think one of the important point. And then yeah, just be yourself. Just talk to the community, get involved in Twitter, get involved in chats, in whatever the community, what the community is active, basically. Just be yourself and just share what you know, and be visible. Basically, be there, because if you're hidden, if you don't participate, nobody will notice you, and that's not how you will be known by the community.
Great tips, both of you. Thanks, Ro, for inspiring even me now, because I'm feeling myself lazy that I'm not doing so much content. But I would say here, adding to the Benoît's words, that try to be impactful. Try to be specific for what you're trying to achieve, and say that, okay, I would like to achieve that, and I'm solving like by this. And if you have a clear statement on what and why you're doing, I think you could get an audience. You could get community builders or serverless hero program. But with the AWS community builder, actually everyone could go and join it. I was thinking that I'm not having enough audience, but it's not like that. Everyone could become AWS community builder if one has the content already in any kind of version. You can do it even on TikTok, as people are doing. So it doesn't matter. Just do it. Just try it. And if you fail, just try it one more time. And if you want to be the part of community, you don't need to be even a community builder or hero, because there are so many folks out there on Twitter or LinkedIn, especially on Twitter, who are talking about serverless or AWS or infrastructure as code, Kubernetes on AWS, many different things. Just do it. And be friendly to each other, and that's the best thing you can achieve. And yeah, we need more people in Africa, I think, because Ro wants a company. We need to help him. Definitely.
Absolutely. No, that's amazing. Just to add to this as well, I think something that's practiced a lot is the learning in public. I know I've heard Ro talk about this before as well. I know Benoît practiced it, Igor obviously practiced it, and so do I. And so anybody listening, obviously you have these almost like these titles, right? Like AWS Hero, Community Builder, and so on. And you almost become that representative as well. So now you have that burden of basically having to bear that for the extent of it, right? I would say that ultimately, probably, speaking a little bit for probably Ro, I think, you set out with like a good intention to basically share knowledge and to learn yourself. And I think that that's a very real, genuine motivation. And I think if anybody's coming from that perspective, regardless of if you hit that status or not, I think that you're going to make a really big impact. And ultimately that leads to expanding your network, more job opportunities. As Ro mentioned, teaching can be the best way to really concrete those concepts. So it's good for you as well. And ultimately, the more of that we do, the more everything else grows in all directions. And it's a very liberating thing. Obviously, y'all write code, you know how to build things in software. Not the most of the population doesn't know how to do that. And it's almost this like magical power that we have to kind of create things. And we can create anything. So the more people that have the opportunity to do that, the more amazing things that we can create for the world, right? So going way too deep on that, but we're past our time. So we still have some people that are watching. I do want to go through the questions real quick. So if you're going to stick around for that, let's go ahead and jump into it. If you need to drop off, thank you for coming and watching, and we'll see you next time. But let's go ahead and jump into these questions. First off, I want to throw up Matt Morgan here. So my company didn't worry about lock-in with serverless because we were already completely locked in with S3, SQS, VPCs, Aurora, RDS, etc. And there we go. Yeah. So if you had a laundry list of all the services that actually run your application with, serverless or non-serverless, it's probably hundreds. And so, yeah, makes complete sense there. Thanks for coming out, Matt. I know that you were here last time as well, and your insights really useful and helpful. Thank you. We got one from Daniel here. We had the exact situation with building an e-commerce solution for a client using AWS, which became a vulnerability at some point. So I'm assuming, I'm wondering if this is about the cloud provider. I think it is. Let me pull up his next answer here. For sure, it would have been avoidable in the first place, starting with the provider, not in the e-commerce industry. So I might have to guess at this a little bit. Maybe one of y'all, if that makes more sense. I'm thinking they built an e-commerce application for a client using AWS. However, they needed to go to another cloud provider for some reason. And that's just maybe the industry compliance reasons. Is that kind of make sense to what y'all are thinking as well with this question? Daniel, if you're still around, feel free to add clarity there.
Yeah, I guess that's how I understood it. Maybe there was some conflict with Amazon being in e-commerce as well. So they had to switch. Yeah.
That's always a
one
dicey
thing
topic.
here. how to basically sell it to the client. Then AWS is a nice thing because of the compliance reasons. For example, you can use database in your region, and there are many services like that. For example, if there are worries that you're not compliant on where you're storing your data, you can try to use the one database that you have in your region, in your country, and there are many opportunities for that. So we can try to do it like that.
And I know that it's getting better too. I know that probably compliance is potentially the biggest sticking issue for when people need to switch providers. There's sometimes requirements where data has to be inside of that region. So we've had clients in Canada where it had to be inside of that Canadian region. And so you could probably say that where does it break down? You built the POC, a company outside of a AWS region that has a country compliance requirement, used a non-country based consulting company or freelancers that then built the project in a different region, which is not supported in that country. And then therefore they had to throw everything away and rebuild from scratch. I imagine that's happened at least 100 times. I don't know. I think across everything, I don't think it's happened 100,000 times or 10,000 times, but I'd imagine it's happened at least once. So interesting there. Ro, any thoughts on this one about just compliance and so on? Switching regions? No. Okay. All right. Let's move on to. Okay. So let's move over to J-Mint real quick. Thanks for being with us. Every heroes don't need to wear a cape to be a hero, but still they are with passion. They're following. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that everybody on this panel, and I would say probably everybody that's like watching us right now is probably a very passionate person about this, and we're helping create the future of this, which is amazing. AWS hero like Ro always inspires us. There you go. And we have Daniel giving more context here. That's it. AWS is also in the e-commerce industry, so it became a competition. Yeah, and this would be one if we wanted to really put an AWS person on the spot, we could just pop this question in without letting the AWS PR department know, and then watch what happens afterwards. But yeah, it's a concern. I know that the argument that like Netflix, for instance, with Amazon Prime Video, and of course there's this other side too. They say that not all problems in society can be fixed with tech, right? As a software developer, I'm like, maybe a lot of them though. But the emotional side too, right? Like the emotional side of Netflix running on AWS when AWS also has Prime Video, and they still use AWS because they believe that ultimately the customers, they can innovate faster with the customers on AWS than not on AWS. even though they're a direct competitor in that space. However, there's an emotional aspect, obviously, that all of us have to deal with as consultants with clients, where they may not be as open to that kind of logical argument there. So yeah, thanks for sharing the experience, Daniel. Really appreciate it. Okay, well, let's see. Oh, we have Will here. Let's see Will's real quick. If you're already using AWS for RDS, for example, you need to consider your data out if there's concerns about vendor lock-in, because you already are, and the move away cost is huge. Yeah, so just again, on the topic of, we're all talking about our Lambda functions and our application code, but the real dicey area is how you move that data, and that can be very extreme. So, okay, as we're coming to a close here, I'll give everybody a chance to give your final thoughts. Do you have things that you want to shout out? Do you have promotions that are coming up? Are you giving talks? Are you writing articles? Let's go ahead and kick it off with Ro. Feel free to take the floor.
Okay. Really, I don't think I have anything to shout out just yet. I think everything I'm working on is still it's just under the table. But if anything, if it shows up, then I'll definitely put it out there for everybody to catch up on.
I could continue on that. Yeah, thank you for this awesome conversation, guys. Ro is so funny guy. I just cannot stand this and not to laugh. Basically, just subscribe me on Twitter, follow me in LinkedIn if you want. I'm happy to share things. I'm happy to answer questions if somebody is asking me in direct messages, and I'm really happy to communicate with people in any form. And yeah, I need to prepare then this article about SAM and CDK and my experience with that and serverless application repository. Let's do this.
Yeah, I think I do have one thing to mention myself. If you use, we talked about infrastructure as code in Serverless Framework. If you do use the Serverless Framework with AppSync, as you may know, I do maintain the AppSync plugin for the framework, and I'm actually working on the version 2, which is going to be in public beta or alpha really soon. So just keep an eye on it, and if you want to become a tester and just provide some feedback, anything is welcome. Your experience trying out the new version, and yeah, that's basically it. So please give me some feedback.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining us on the panel today. Special thank you to Igor for being our guest, our guest. I don't know a better way to say that right now. I think my brain's a little bit fried, but I appreciate everybody watching. Thanks again. We're gonna have another serverless panel coming up next month. If you have questions that you want us to answer or topics, definitely drop those on Twitter and we'll take them seriously and probably add them into the thing. But on that note, I think we're good to wrap up. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.